Yeah, friends, welcome back. And most probably, this video is for your Wednesday class. So that would be your 1st of April, I guess. Now, so previously we looked into some of these topics, which I'll quickly skip, and then we were talking about function point analysis, where we've already covered this particular topic, but still we were throwing some light on this particular topic, and we said that okay, this is something which is a metric which is broadly used, a popular one, and is giving some good number of estimates in some sense, right from people required, right from timing, that tells you that okay, by what date it will be over, and then finally the budget and all. So that particular thing is something which is very crucial for any company, whether it is an SME or maybe a company working at a very large scale. uh, for both the cases, it's something which comes out to be very handy. That's why it's very popular. Your function point analysis is something which is very popular. So we looked into all these things, your general characteristics. Then we talked about the adjustment based on the adjustment factors, where we said that okay, let's multiply it with the value adjustment factor. That would result into an adjusted function point, which is your function point which has been fixed for a to be developed application based on the kind of uh, variation which it has from the previous projects, or not only with the variations, or maybe for some of the parameters on which the particular project is paying more focus. So based on that, we adjust our function points. Then we talked about CMM level as well. Yes, we talked about CMM level. We were talking about customer problem matrix, and we said that okay, we can calculate your PUM. Then there were some approaches to achieve a low PUM as well. We then further talked about your scope of quality, where we said that okay, defects resulting to the customer problems, resolve it, and we are able to get the customer satisfaction at the end. And that's what our ultimate aim is. And then we were talking about customer satisfaction metrics. So here we said that okay, see, since our ultimate aim to have a satisfied customer, because at the end that's how we are going to get more business out of it. Because if my customer is satisfied, so definitely he or she is going to recommend our particular firm to a number of people. So a satisfied customer will lead to good business, right? That's what the major giants take care of. And here we said that okay, it is measured in a 5 point scale, where one is you're very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied. So we also said that okay, we can keep it in a format that I can make it into 7 categories. It's like very very satisfied, satisfied, then neutral, then dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, and very dissatisfied or highly dissatisfied. Then we looked into some of these examples, or maybe probably I have to start from here. So where we said that okay, this is one of the example where how IBM considers some of the parameters for getting to know how satisfied the customers are. So it is in a form of your QPRIM DSO categories, which are like capability, functionality, your usability, your performance, your reliability, your installability, your maintainability, documentation, some relevant information, plus services, and your overall factors, right? So looking at all these things, which are like your capability, functionality, usability, your reliability, and all, um, you might have got some idea that once again, since we are talking about the customer satisfaction, so ultimately we are once again talking about all these X abilities, which are nothing but your non-functional attributes or your non-functional parameters, and which are ultimately taking us towards the same thing, which is your quality aspects, right? So we had a good amount of discussion on functional aspects and non-functional aspects, where we said that okay, if we are talking about non-functional aspects, that means we are talking about quality attributes, and these are nothing but the quality attributes. So just imagine my customer satisfaction is directly dealing with your quality attribute. So it only talking about how quality product I have received as an end customer, what kind of quality product I have received. Now this is one of the example by your Hewlett Packard. So HP has these 5 parameters. So like previously IBM had many, HP is focusing on 5. And once again, if you carefully see that these functionality, usability, reliability and performance are nothing but your non-functional attributes only. So all these quality aspects only. And on top of it, they have added the service as well. So post deployment or post delivery of the product, service is also something to be considered, which plays a very important role in this case. And that's how we achieve our targets in the form of getting more and more customers. So what we have is, we have something called as your net satisfaction index. In some sense it is also a kind of metric. So some of these companies use the net satisfaction index, which is your NSI, just to facilitate the comparisons across the products, right? So what NSI says is that for a completely satisfied, that means it is 100%, if it is satisfied it is 75%, and if it is neutral then it is 50%, then further if we are dissatisfied 25%, completely dissatisfied, so it is 0%. So basically it is ranging from 0%, which is like all customers are completely dissatisfied, to 100%, that means all the customers are completely satisfied. Right. So if all customers are satisfied or are not completely satisfied, so I'll be giving a value of 75%. So this weighing approach, however, may be masking the satisfaction profile of one set of customers. For example, like in half of the customers might be completely satisfied and half of the customers might be neutral. So in that case your NSI value will be somewhere close to 75%, right? So 50 plus 100, and then based on like 50-40% scenario, it's like 75%, which will be like equivalent to that I'm falling into satisfied category. That means 50% of my customers are like 100% satisfied, 50% of my customers are neutral, right? So overall comparison which I'm taking is like, in case of a bigger picture, what I see is that in total, like totality says that okay, my customers are satisfied. Overall customers are nothing but satisfied. And if this satisfaction is a good indicator of product loyalty, then the half completely satisfied and half completely neutral is certainly less positive than all satisfied customers, right? And then we are not sure of the rationale behind giving a 25% weightage to those who are dissatisfied, right? So sometimes this calculation may result into some kind of estimate which is not correct, right? So this, therefore, considering this net satisfaction index is not it's not a good thing, or maybe it's not a good metric, because it is inferior to the simple approach of calculating percentage of specific categories, right? If in some cases you may come across a situation where, let's say, 50% of the customers are completely satisfied, 50% of the customers are completely dissatisfied, and once again I'm overall getting a neutral ranking, whereas either I'm falling on the right hand side of the graph or I'm falling on the extremely left hand side of the graph. So once again, this does not appear to be a quality metric, although it is talking about quality factors and the satisfactory index, but yet it does not appear to be a quality metric. So NSI, net satisfaction index, is not the appropriate thing to be considered as far as satisfaction index is to be measured. And right, some of the simple indicators can give us better estimate as compared to your net satisfaction index, where we can have multiple parameters, just like your previous cases of Hewlett Packard and your IBM, we had good number of options, whereas in this case it's like we have 5 parameters, but my ultimate calculation is not coming out to be a correct one. I mean, data which it can be highly biased one side, and the net calculation will not be the correct one. So that's why people avoid using this net satisfaction index for calculating the satisfactory parameter, right? So people avoid using this particular thing. Now, next is your in-process quality matrix. In the initial discussions, we said, okay, further the classification is also done into 2 parts, which is your in-process and the second one is, let me go back to this particular slide where you will realize that, okay, we have already talked about this particular topic as well. So we were talking about the matrices and all, then in between we said, okay, these are something which are to be considered. Let me glance through that particular set of slide. So yeah, we were looking into this. We had 3 P's, then we were talking about these matrices, and on top of it we said, okay, there is something called as in-process matrix, in-process quality matrix, or in-process quality matrix, right? So this was we discussed this long back when we were starting this particular topic. So let's come back to this particular thing. Now let's talk about in-process quality matrix. So what we do is that, since our goal is to understand the programming process, and we need to learn to engineer the quality into the process. Process means throughout the development process. So this particular process quality matrix are like less formally defined than your end product matrix, because it's like throughout the development process I'll take care of the processes which are included in the development, and whether these processes which we are following are the quality one or not is to be considered in this. Now your next topic based on your CIF is on your defect density, and this is something which is your defect density during the machine testing. Now when we say defect density, it is something which is like higher your defect rates which is found during the testing, during machine testing. It's the same. This is an indicator that the software has experienced higher error injection during its development process. That means throughout the development there were continuous errors which were injected, of course knowingly or unknowingly. The chances are unknowingly the errors are injected. So that particular thing is your defect density matrix. Now defect rate during the formal machine testing is usually positively correlated with the defect rate, and we say that higher defect rates are found during the testing, which indicates that the software has experienced higher error injection. And this is provided that unless the higher testing defect rate is due to an extraordinary testing effort, like for example, all of a sudden I went for an ad hoc testing approach, and that appears to be something which is more effective in detecting the defects. Now the question arises, what is ad hoc testing? So what basically it is, that in the traditional, in some of the situations where we come across a situation where your traditional testing fails to uncover the defects which are there in the application or the product. So for that sake, what we do is we go ahead with any of the ad hoc approach, that randomly I'll take a testing technique and I'll try to shoot the data to the product and I'll try to uncover the defects, right? As the name suggests, ad hoc, so it is something which is brought all of a sudden based with no proper thoughts given. Yeah, of course some amount of experience of test manager plays a very important role, that what kind of ad hoc testing technique can uncover the defects which are there in the product. So this is something which is also normally followed. Now next is your judging the release quality, right? So what we do is that if the defect rate during the testing is same or lower than that of the previous release, or maybe for a similar product, then the question arises, does the testing for the current release deteriorate? Now, for this, if the answer is no, the quality perspective is something which is positive. And if the answer is yes, you need to do some extra testing. That means extra testing can be done by taking some extra test cases in order to increase the test coverage. I can go ahead with the blitz testing, or I can go ahead with customer testing, I can go ahead with stress testing, or any other testing technique. Right. So what we do is we in any particular company we have test data which are lifted from test cases, right, which are there in the test suits. So normally what we do is we take a subset of test suite which results into test cases in order to reach the product. It's something like in your lab hours, what you do is many times you people fire 2-3 values and you are able to test a product which appears to be a correct one. Whereas when once the TA comes and he or she fires some values which are something extra, so in that case your product fails, right? So the coverage becomes high. That means more amount of varied data if you are firing, so more amount of coverage we are doing. So the coverage, your expansion, it's like expanding the horizons, right, in case of testing. Now another thing is that if the defect rate during testing is substantially higher than that of the previous release or maybe of the similar project, then what we have is the question which we need to ask is that did we plan for an actually improved testing effectiveness, right? In this case, if the answer is no, then the quality perspective is negative, right? Because in that case, if I'm saying no, then my quality perspective is something which is very negative. And ironically, the only remedial approach that can be taken at this stage of the life cycle is to do more and more testing, which may yield even higher defect rates, right? So in both the cases, I'm going to go ahead with your higher testings, right? And if the answer is yes, then the quality perspective is same or positive, right? So we are talking about this thing in comparison to the previous releases or in comparison with your similar products. And right now what we are trying to do is we are trying to judge the kind of quality which this particular product has, which has been released, right? The release product. So that means the release quality of the released product. Now next is your defect arrival pattern during the machine testing. So the pattern of defect arrivals, or for that matter time between your failures, gives more information, right? So it's like, once again, I take a call on the kind of pattern which I am receiving. This pattern is of defect arrival. So it tells that, okay, let me take a call on it. Okay, the kind of negative values we are firing, we are getting this kind of errors. And when we are firing some positive values which are less than 100, so we are not getting some errors. After 100, we are once again getting some errors, right? So we try to observe some pattern or the other while we fire some values to the product. So even with this same overall defect rate during the testing, different patterns of different arrivals indicate different quality levels in the field. Because let's say same kind of errors were observed during the testing phase, and now what we are getting is we get something which is different. That this particular pattern is something different of your defect arrival, which is indicating your different quality levels in the field. That means when my product is on field, then it is giving different kind of errors, right? So it is like, in some sense, many times you come across a situation where your software project runs very good when you are running on your laptop, and you are running in your hostels, then during the presentation time, all of a sudden when the instructor asks you to install the entire things on a particular desktop and give the demo, it fails, right? So many times you come across these kinds of situations as well in your smaller projects as well. Now next is your phase based defect removal pattern. So it is okay. Before going to this, let me throw some more light on it. In case what happens is during the initial days, what we may come across is initial days. That means during this testing, I may not even encounter a particular defect, but later on I may observe that there are some serious issues with this particular product. So that kind of issues also we may come across. Now coming back to this, your phase based defect removal. So phase itself gives you an idea that okay, this is something which is talking about your development cycle, right? So development cycle means right from the initial phases and all. So this requires the tracking of defect at all phases of software development. All phases means it includes your design reviews, your code inspection, your formal verification, and even in case of, let's say, higher level design review, I can go ahead with testing. I can go ahead with observing the defect removal pattern. Even in case of low level design reviews, even in case of code inspection, or in unit testing, or in component testing, or in system testing, and so on and so forth. And in this particular thing, in addition to the defect trace, many development organizations use metrics such as inspection coverage and inspection effort for in-process quality management. Right. So since we are talking about this phases which are there in the development phase, so definitely we may consider these two aspects as well, two metrics. That means your inspection coverage and your inspection efforts for in-process quality management. Now next is your defect removal effectiveness. So this particular matrix has a straightforward formula, which is your defect removal during your development phase upon defects latent in the product into 100, where defect latent is equal to defect removes during the development phase plus defects found later. Now this particular thing, what it does is that we have a simple formula where we have this thing. Now in defect latent, defect removes during the development phase plus defects found later. So both these things gives you a clear cut idea that what basically the defects latents are. Now next thing is your metrics for software maintenance, and this particular matrix is definitely talking about your maintenance phase. When we talk about a generic software development life cycle, so your maintenance comes at the later stage, where at the end what we try to do is that we wait for the entire process of software development, and then later on we take a call that okay, I am going to bring some changes. This changes can be due to various factors which we have done previously. So in that case, what we do is we bring the software into regression, right? My software regresses. So here what we have is, in case of metrics for the software maintenance, the defect arrivals by time interval and customer problem calls by time intervals are the de facto metrics. So these two things are something which are to be considered. One is your defect arrivals by time interval and your customer problem calls by time interval once again. These two are the de facto matrices. Although the number of defects or problems arrival is largely determined by the development process before the maintenance phase only, so what can be done during the maintenance phase is to fix the defects as soon as possible and with excellent fix quality. That means I need to try I need to try the maintenance phase which can be fixed. That means we need to make some extra efforts as soon as possible while we are going ahead with the maintenance, or in order to fix the defects. So if we recall our previous discussions on the maintenance, we say that okay, post deployment I am going ahead with either adding some extra functionalities, or I am taking some inputs from the end user in the form of customer reporting some issues with the applications, and then I am going ahead with this particular thing, which is your software maintenance. Now these are some of these matrices for software maintenance. One is your fixing the backlog and the backlog management index. Another one is fixing the response time and fixing the responsiveness. Two more we can add to it is your percent delinquent fixes and your fix quality. Now for this, what we have is when the development of a software product is complete and it is released to the market, it enters the maintenance phase of its life cycle. And now during this phase, the defect arrivals by time interval and customer problem calls, which may or may not be defects by time interval, are the de facto matrices. However, the number of defects of problem arrivals is largely determined by the development process before the maintenance phase. Not much can be done to alter the quality of the product during this phase. So therefore, these two de facto matrices, although important, do not reflect the quality of software maintenance. And what can be done during the maintenance phase is to fix the defects as soon as possible and with excellent fix quality. Now, this particular topic finishes your Unit 3. In our next discussion, we will talk about your next unit, that means your Unit 4, because now we are done with this particular unit which was talking about software quality matrices and all. So that means your third unit is done, and in the next unit what we are going to do is we are going to talk about your software quality management models. Now in this model we will talk about in this unit we will talk about your modeling processes, we will talk about your software reliability models. We'll look into some of these software reliability models such as your Rayleigh model or your exponential distribution and software reliability growth models. So all these things we'll talk about. In addition to that, we'll have some software quality assessment models as well. So that would be in your next video, which I'll be coming up with very soon. Before that, on Friday, which is your, I guess it is April 3rd, we are going to have a doubt class. If suppose you have any doubts on in this particular video or in the previous video which I have shared with you, that was for Monday class. So we'll have a doubt session, and afterwards what we will be doing is we'll take we'll be moving towards your Unit 4, and probably we'll be able to finish this course well in time. Next unit is comparatively much more interesting than this. That's what I feel. So probably you will have more content to be looked into, and something which is interesting which is going to come up in the next video. So see you soon.